This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast.
Welcome to Finish Lines and Milestones, a podcast that celebrates the everyday runner. I'm your host, Allie Bretnacher. Whether you're a seasoned marathoner, half marathoner, ultra marathoner, prefer shorter distances, or just getting started, if you run, you are a runner, and every runner has a story. Join me each week as I share these stories, and we cross finish lines and celebrate milestones together. This podcast is brought to you by Athlete Bouquets. Celebrate the finish lines and milestones of the people you love by visiting athletebouquets.com. Use code PODCAST for 10% off your order. Hello and welcome to episode 91. This is Allie, and I am getting more and more excited about what's to come this year. Working on a few different things, and one of those, I'm going to have you save the date for Friday, May 2nd, the day before the Indianapolis Indy Mini. Lindsay Hine from the I'll Have Another podcast with Lindsay Hine, also the founder of the Sandy Boy Productions podcast network that I'm now so lucky to be a part of, is coming to town, and we're having an event at the Bottle Works Hotel, and it's going to be amazing. We don't know all the details yet, but we at least have a date, a time, and a place. So there will be a live show for the I'll Have Another podcast. We'll interview maybe a running pro, maybe some local celebrity runners, kind of unsure of what that looks like at this time or what sponsors we're going to have involved, but really excited to see that come together. And perhaps those of you who are not local to Indianapolis, it could be a great reason for you to finally come in town for this really, really fun race. You get to run around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway track, which is pretty cool, even if you're not a race fan. So I am in the process of gearing up for my first race of the year, which will be the Rock and Roll Las Vegas Half Marathon in Vegas towards the end of February. And I found out that my Instagram friend, Nicole Lynn, who is Below Average Running, is also going to be there. I've been trying to recruit other friends and people to come, but I'm going with my dad at this point, and we get to see the Eagles at the Sphere, and my dad is in his element in Vegas. And so I'm super excited to have that as my first race of the year again. And not sure how I'm going to play it yet, but I had an 11-mile run on the treadmill yesterday, which was somewhat brutal, not just because it was on the treadmill, but also challenging. So we'll see if I race it, if I have fun, if I do a combination. And then I wanted to shout out a couple of previous guests who are doing cool things. Cameron Balzer, who was episode 75, he ran around the perimeter of the United States. Super cool. If you haven't listened to that episode, go do it. But Cameron recently had a shoe made for him, and in celebration of his incredible accomplishment last year. And Mount to Coast is the shoe brand that made this incredible shoe. So go check out Mount to Coast's Instagram if you want to check that out. It's a really cool colorway. Got his tagline inside, moving and grooving on the insole. It's just so cool to know somebody that has a shoe named after them. And Cameron certainly deserves that recognition and honor. And then my friend Lindsay Welty, who was episode 86, she is running the long haul 100-miler in Florida this weekend. That is if you listen to this when it comes out. And also I wanted to make sure that I wished all the Houston marathoners good luck this weekend. A previous guest of this podcast, Carrie Bradshaw, yes, you heard me correctly, episode 73, will be taking on the half marathon, and she has 2 bionic hips. So just an incredible story. If you haven't listened to her story, she's coached by the Meb Keflebsky, which is really cool. Anyway, good luck to everybody going after amazing things this weekend and beyond. Super excited about what this year has to offer. So now for this week's episode, my friend Betsy Michael is on, and her and I met through a mutual running friend, Kim Bowers, who lives in Philadelphia. Betsy's in Chicago. And we talk about how we kind of had this group of women that would run destination races every year and how much we miss that. But I got to know Betsy that way, and then got to know her even better through this interview. And I'm so proud of her for having a great experience and a fun time at the Chicago Marathon last year. And I also think she's just the coolest. So I know you're going to love this conversation with my friend Betsy. Good morning, Betsy.
Hey, Allie.
I was trying to think of how long it's been since I've seen you in person.
It might have been the Cottonwood Canyon Marathon.
That's what my guess was going to be, because I was like, okay, that was in 2016. Chicago that we did was before that. And then,
Yeah.
And now you're a mom. I
We
mean, how
both
old
are.
is, was I? Oh yeah, I wasn't even a mom then.
Yeah, we've lived so
Jeez.
many lifetimes since we saw each other in person last.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, so how did you and I first meet? Who was it through? I was trying to also remember that. Was it Laura?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's through, so we have some friends in common, and it might have been Kim Bowers was like our connection point.
Okay.
Because I actually met Laura through Kim. So Allie and I both have a friend in common, Kim, who is also a runner. And for several years running, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years, a group of us would meet and run a marathon. Not together. We weren't like holding hands or anything. And we all lived in different places. Some of us were in Chicago. Allie was in Indiana, a couple other locations. And so I kind of just met you through this, I don't know, organic crew of women who ran. So
Yeah,
we've run like several marathons together, and we've even slept in the same bed together.
We have. I was thinking about that too, because every time that memory pops into my head, I just think, oh my gosh, poor Betsy had to sleep in a bed with me when I thought I was like dying and like hacking up a lung.
No, but Allie, so the story is we were running the Philadelphia Marathon. Allie and I both were slotted to run the full race. Allie was not feeling great. And I remember you downgraded to the half. And that was a big decision for you. It's really hard to do that when you've trained for a full. But you were my good luck charm because that was my PR. I ran a sub 4, and it's the only time I've run a sub 4. So next time I go for that goal, I need Allie. You got to come and cough
I'll
next
come
to me.
sleep with you. Yeah. And just cough in your ear and you'll be like, yes, the sweet sounds that just get me excited to go run my best race.
It worked out.
Oh, it did. That's so crazy. Yeah. I love the group of women that we just kind of cobbled together. I actually met Kim through Selena, our friend who's in Texas, Austin, Texas. And both of them I will have on this podcast, and Laura too at some point. But yeah, I actually met Kim at the Carmel Half Marathon, like while we were running. Like Selena's like, oh yeah, this is Kim. And then we ended up running like the entire race together. So that's kind of funny too.
What a way to meet someone.
Right. And how did you meet Kim?
Kim and I worked in the same company for about a year, and we both found out we were runners, and so we just kind of became fast friends. So everyone in that group that did that have done these multiple marathons together, you mentioned Selena and Laura, I all have met through Kim. She's the glue.
Point. She's the connector.
Mm-hmm.
We got to figure out how to get our next race. I have tried to get you guys to do Vegas, and everyone's like, yeah, that's not for me. And I'm like, all right, well, okay, we'll find something.
Well, it does just become, we were on a really good streak for a while, then pandemic happened, and then everyone in this group, I think, has kids now. And so that just, kind of adjusts your timelines for when you can train and what you can do. So maybe once we're all done having kids, we can I mean, I have this vision that we're going to be like 70 years old, still running marathons together.
I hope so. Yeah, it was the kids thing, I think, that really did it. I forget who started it. Ashley, maybe? Because I almost forgot about Ashley Schwab because she now has 4 children.
Yeah.
So once she's done, my Lord, I don't know if she'll be, I don't know. I think she's on the fence for 5. And I'm just like, okay.
Oh my goodness.
It's insane. So anyway, yeah, once we all stop having kids, then we can finally do this again. So yeah, so you just ran Chicago back in October.
Yes, I did.
And first of all, I've just got to say, you just have a way with words.
Well, thanks.
I mean, obviously it's what you do, but you're just like, I love reading your captions. I love going through and looking at some of your blog stuff that you've done. But I want to hear all about Chicago, your first marathon post Otto.
Yeah. So this past marathon, Chicago 2024, was really momentous for me for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it was my 10th marathon in 20 years. So I'm going to say my age. I'm 38 years old. So I ran my first marathon when I was 18, which is kind of bananas.
Yeah.
Just so happens that was also Chicago. So I ran Chicago in 2004, doing math in my head.
Yeah.
And I've run Chicago several times since, but I've run other marathons as well. So, but yeah, this was my 10th race or 10th marathon. And it was a big deal for me because the last marathon I ran, which would have been 2021, was just a complete disaster, such to the point that it burned me out of running, and I honestly thought I was never going to run again. It was a combination of ill preparedness, really bad race day conditions. It was so hot at the start. They elevated the race conditions from orange to red like mid-race. And I just didn't have the right nutrition and hydration strategy, and that I had no strategy whatsoever. And which is kind of embarrassing. Like, that would have been my 9th marathon, and I was just like, oh, put some gels in my pockets and I'll just run, which is, I don't recommend that. So it was really, really bad and kind of gross, but this is what happened. I barfed everything in my body at mile 18. I totally bonked. I had nothing left, and I had to walk the last 8 miles, which was like such, I really wanted to finish the race, but every time I tried to run, I felt like I was going to get pulled off the course because I was going to hit the ground. So it was just awful. And it sucks. I mean, I should be excited that I finished the race, but I couldn't feel like that. I'm such completionist, someone who sets a really high bar for myself, that I kind of entered this like depression for a couple of weeks after, where I was just like, you really messed up, Betsy. Like, you should have known better. And I did try to go on a few runs after that, and I just, like, my heart wasn't into it. Everything hurt. And so I was just like, yep, I'm done. Like, running is a thing that's over for me. I'm never going to do it again. It's no good. So fast forward a couple years, I had my son actually on marathon weekend. So it's a very special weekend for me. The marathon is always the second weekend of October in Chicago. So I went out to cheer some friends that day. I had him the next day. So I was like literally the most pregnant I've ever been. Yeah. And for those of you who have kids, and you know this, Allie, it's the first year was just a lot. There was a lot going on. Figuring out how to keep a human alive. In retrospect, I don't think my mental health was super great. So I kind of thought about running, but I was just like, I can't do it. Like, I just can't. And I was so envious of friends who would be like, back to running in 3 months, 6 months. They're like running marathons, half marathons. I was just like, what?
Yeah.
So it was a full year after I had my son that I could even like think about running. And at that point, I had like no endurance left. My body had changed so much. I also had a C-section. So there's like, fortunately, no like real complications, but I don't know, your body changes a lot. You had to learn how to live in a new body, kind of.
Yeah.
And so when my son turned 1, I was like, I'm going to try to run the marathon next year. And it was like starting from scratch. Not only was it returning to running in a completely new body, but I decided that if I wanted to do this again, I had to completely change my relationship with running. And previously had been super performance obsessed. I was always trying to like hit a certain time. I was always really hard on myself. I was running really extreme. I was always doing extreme plans. Like, I was always doing like the advanced Hal Higdon plan, which is like, I don't know. It's like 320 milers. It's really high mileage. It's a lot of mileage. And I decided to do a low mileage training plan. I don't think I hit more than like 30 or 35 miles at my peak. Incorporate a lot of strength training. And I also started working with a sports nutritionist because I was so fearful of what happened in my last race. And that really, really helped me figure out how to basically just fuel before, during, and after runs. Because previously I didn't have kids. I could go run 20 miles, come home, lay on the bed for the rest of the day and feel miserable.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore. I come home and a toddler like runs at me and is ready to party. So
Yeah.
that really helped with my energy levels. And the biggest thing was that I really decided that I was not going to hit a goal time for this race. My goal was simply to enjoy myself and have fun. And the other change I made was I joined a running group, which I was so against before. I thought running group people were like weirdos. And I don't know why I thought that.
That is funny.
I just was like, it's something you do on your own. You got to like suffer alone. And I had a close friend who runs with this group in Chicago called 3-Run-2. And she's like, hey, just like, we've got this run on Saturdays, like come check it out. And I really took to it. There were several people training for fall marathons, including Chicago. So I had this accountability where I knew I was going to see people at 6 a.m. for those long runs. Had to get out of bed, and it made it so much better. It was I made new friends, the camaraderie on those runs. And when you're like really struggling alongside people, because, no one's loving running all the time, especially if you're doing a lot of mileage. Like in the summer, there are some days where it's just really rough. It really helps to be around people. So that was kind of the lead up to the race, and the race went great. I love Chicago. I'm from Chicago, of course, so I'm biased, but I was actually just thinking about the race last night when I was kind of taking some notes for this podcast, and I started tearing up because I did have a nutrition strategy this time. I worked with my nutritionist to figure out like what I would take every 45 minutes or every 5 miles, I think it was. And my running group 312 has this huge cheer squad at mile 20, and I was just like, just get to mile 20. And I've never felt like this running before. Like I felt like a celebrity. It's just like people going crazy for you. Like I had friends who were like coming out, like carrying flags, like running down the street with me. Someone took a photo of me that I will not share because it's too embarrassing, but I basically look unhinged. Like I look like I just scored the winning Super Bowl touchdown.
Unhinged.
Like I have like my arms up and I'm like, yeah, which running has always, I have never felt that much joy while running before. And so that's why this race was such a big deal for me. It was first since having a kid, really changing my relationship to running, but also like, I think one of the most fun races I've ever had, which there are races where you might be chasing a certain time or a PR, and this just wasn't that. And it was just really fun. So I felt so proud to cross the finish line. And I was like, hell yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people are in 312?
It's a hard question because it's just kind of like whoever shows up, and it's not like you pay membership dues or anything.
Interesting. Okay.
So I really don't know. I mean, probably hundreds. It definitely has a lot more people showing up over the summer because a lot of people are training for fall races. They also have like a racing team, which I am not part of because I'm not fast enough. But they have like a whole team of people that are super fast. And then I kind of call myself the caboose because I'm
the caboose
pulling up the rear. But that's another thing too, is when we would do these long training runs on the weekends, basically would meet at the same point at the lakefront, and then everyone just does whatever mileage they have that day. Mm-hmm. And so the fast people, they'd be like out and back. Some of them are doing laps, and you wear your gear, you wear your 312 gear. And so you like see people, you get to know people. We call them flybys, and you're just like, hey, I know that person. And it just felt like a big party sometimes to be out there on the lake. You'd be surprised how many people are out at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask where. So it's all on the lakeshore that you would run?
Yeah, we'd always meet up north at Foster Beach, but there are several other running groups out there too, and there's aid stations. So just running down, like basically out and back for whatever your mileage is that day. So if you're running 20, you like run 20 miles, run 10 miles south and turn around and come back.
Yeah. I finally got to run on the lakeshore again this last fall break. I hadn't been to Chicago, Betsy, since before the pandemic, which was crazy because it's not that far. It's like 3 hours, but we just hadn't gone. And like with the girls, Zach and I could have come for like a weekend, but we just hadn't. And so we went for our fall break, and I was so happy that I got to run on the lakeshore because it's just, it's so magical. It's like people from Indy. It's like picture the Monon, except it's like on the lake, and it's so pretty. And then you see so many people. That has to be really nice.
And because, Chicago has trails and paths around and stuff, but that's the most significant mileage. So basically, if you're training for a long race, you're probably doing it there. And so, all summer, it's just, there's so many people out there. And I really love that sense of camaraderie of everyone's put in the work, everyone's doing their own mileage, whatever they work out they have to do that day, but you're like around other people. Even just that presence of other people who are all doing it too is, I don't know, it's way different than if you're just like slogging along alone on some, we've all been there where it's like, today I've got to do these miles. It doesn't work out with anyone else's schedule. So I'm just going to go out and run a long time by myself.
Yep.
And hopefully my podcast and my music keep me in company enough.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So did you have people from 312 that you would end up running a majority of your miles with?
Yeah, you kind of fall into people who are same pace as you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, I think what really turned me off from running groups initially was because I had this vision that it was going to be like a clump of 30 people running together, which gives me a lot of anxiety. And those do exist. Like
Yeah.
there are several groups out there on the lake doing exactly that. But this was just more organic, where it's like everyone meets at the same time. We take a group photo, but then everyone just kind of falls into whatever their pace is that day. And so it was more that I was running with maybe like a group of anywhere from like 3 to 4 people. And that felt easier to do than like, I actually did get trapped in one of those pace group ones by accident. And I was like, get me out, get me out. It was like really claustrophobic.
It's like, get me out of here. Yeah. And then sometimes too, then you feel like, I don't know, some people are talking, and sometimes like it's nice to pass the miles, but sometimes like I can't talk. I'm too tired. Or like, you're just like, I need to just listen. I feel like you gravitate kind of towards people that end up balancing you out, whether it's pace or like what you want to do. And then there's just this like unspoken bond, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like where you're just like, okay, this is what we do.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting relationship to be running buddies with someone because you're spending a lot of time together, especially if you're training for a long race. You end up like talking about so many different things.
It's like
whatever's
therapy.
going on in your life. Yeah, you like these people will end up knowing you like very well. Whatever you're struggling with that particular season, they're probably going to hear about it. I was obsessed with the Olympics this summer. And for anyone else who is Olympics obsessed, the Americans had like a standout running Olympics, and other people did too. But some of these races, I had friends that weren't that into the Olympics, but one of them told me, Betsy, I feel like I watched these races because you gave me such a
because you were so excited
intense play-by-play. I was like, the men's 1500, oh my gosh. I was like going on and on about it. So you just talk about whatever you're really obsessed with at that moment, or if there's like life stuff going on, you talk about that. And then you just like don't see them again until next week.
It's so weird. Yes. Yeah.
You spend like a lot of intense time together, and then it kind of just like drops off after the race. But I actually, this is another change for me, is despite having run so many marathons, I would totally burn out by the time I crossed the finish line. I was like, I hate running. I'd basically like chuck my running shoes like into a closet. And I would come back to it within like a few months. But this time I don't hate running. Like I had a great training season. Of course, not without its kind of like peaks and valleys, but I had way more fun than I have ever had before. And I'm still running like with my group. I have some friends training for races, so they're doing a bunch of mileage. So I've been like hopping onto some of their training runs. And that's a huge change to just like run for fun. I always used to only run if I was training for something.
Yeah.
And I decided that I didn't want to do that this year. I can run some races in the future, but that's kind of I told this to some buddies that I ran with this weekend. I'm like, my 2025 resolution is to not commit to any races.
Ooh, it's
hard.
It's gonna be tough. Yeah, especially being in a running group and like seeing people who are all like committed to stuff. And
yeah,
I'm a sucker.
And some of them are doing like major. Like one of my friends is doing Tokyo. Like I'm staying strong. I have a friend who's like gotten a whole crew together to run this Ice Age 50K trail run. And I'm like, that sounds fun, but I'm not committing. I'll train with y'all and I'll do some of the miles.
Yeah.
But I don't need to do like a trail marathon. Maybe someday, but just not now.
Yeah. Right. Well, because now Otto's like a year and a half. It's October weekend.
Yeah. He's a little over 2.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 2. Math is hard.
It is definitely hard.
2. Oh my gosh. And so did you run while you were pregnant at all?
I tried a little bit and it just like didn't feel great.
Yeah.
But again, like timeline wise, 2021 was my awful, no good marathon that basically turned me off of running. I got pregnant in that following January. And once I kind of started to feel better after my first trimester, I did try to run a little bit, but I was just like, I still didn't love it. And I just kind of was like, I don't want to do this. So I think I was still suffering from running burnout. And it wasn't so much about like my pregnancy body being able to do it or not do it, but more that I I didn't really know what I wanted from running at that point, and I didn't know anything else but trying to like achieve my previous performance.
Right.
And that was just like a recipe for failure.
Yeah. I relate to this so much, Betsy, because, well, especially now that my life revolves a lot more around running, with it like being, my job too. I've just looked for different types of experiences and different ways to enjoy it versus just being like, okay, 2025, got a PR again. It's like, no, you don't. Like some people, that's what they do, and that's totally cool. But I'm trying to look for different experiences, like ways to just keep enjoying it, to your point. Like, because at the end of the day, I'm not like, nobody cares if I'm running faster than besides me, right? So I love that you were able to do that and have so much fun and just prove to yourself that you could still do it. Like for me, I remember my first marathon after becoming a mom too. It's just like, I'm still myself in some ways. Like it was like, it let me be myself again. So,
yeah, that was I haven't really touched on that, but it was, one thing I loved about both the running group and getting back to running was that, it let me reclaim this part of my identity that's who I was before becoming a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take away my mom identity. But the new friends I've made through 3Run2, they know me as like Betsy the runner, and they know I'm a mom. I like, we'll talk about my kid and stuff. But that's not unlike, at daycare drop off, like all those people only know me as Betsy the mom,
Right.
Otto's mom. And when I first had him, I joined this like new moms group, and it really wasn't for me because I was like, man, all we do is talk about our kids, and I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to like, we're multifaceted human beings, and I love being a mom, and I love it even more than I did at the beginning. But that's like not the only interesting thing about me, and I don't want it to be.
Right. Yeah. That's I have experienced that too. Not with necessarily a new moms group, but even just, if you're around friends that have just had kids, it's like the focus of everything. And you're kind of like, I can only talk about like that so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
like
love my
I
kids,
can talk, but the funny thing is I don't know why I just thought of this. It's like, I hope this isn't too gross for your audience, but I don't know, we're runners.
We're runners, we don't care.
You talk a lot about, like with mom stuff, especially when you have like little kids, there's like a lot of talk about like poop and stuff. And I'm like, well, now I talk about my own poop with my friends because, you've got to time things, hopefully take the right stuff that doesn't like get you into a bad bathroom situation.
Yeah. Yes. No, exactly. So, you're in good company. Well, it's funny because when you said talking about kids, like that's literally what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I had a friend who like would talk about her kids' poop all the time. And I'm like, I literally like can't hear. I mean, I feel bad saying that almost because she was going through a hard time, getting her kid to poop. But I'm like, if I have to hear about this, like, I just can't talk about poop all day.
I can talk about my own poop.
I can talk about my own poop, like
to my runner friends.
My running friends care that I had a successful poop before my long run, because if I didn't, it would be the worst. Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, I love that. That's so funny. It's so funny. It's so true. Sadly, yeah. So how did you end up getting into marathons in the first place at 18? That's crazy.
Yeah, I know it is. What was I doing? So my sister, she's 4 years older than me. She was a runner. She ran cross country and track, and she was really good. She was excellent. She ran at the collegiate level and just really fast. And when it came time for me like enter high school, I don't know. I just had no like I hadn't played any group sports. I just like wasn't good at anything. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that because my sister did it. And I wasn't very good, or fast. But the thing about me is I am like someone who will finish the job. So that's perfect for a burgeoning endurance runner. You just have to like slog through it at some point. And I knew I wasn't going to run in college. Like I wasn't fast enough. So I decided to just pick like some other really difficult thing to do, which was run a marathon. And again, like some 18-year-olds like go to college and like drink too much and, go to wild parties. I made poor decisions, and that, again, I picked like the Hal Higdon 2. I was like going and running on this trail by my college campus with like no identification, you know, as a young woman, like our phones didn't have like tracking and stuff at that time. I didn't bring any water. I didn't even know what gels were. It was stupid. But you know, you're 18, you can like kind of do dumb stuff to your body and you like rebound quickly.
Right.
So I don't know. I just like, for whatever reason, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't think too hard about it. I just like did it. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I was like hooked, but I must have been because I kept doing marathons. So I was just like, okay, well, I can do that. So maybe I'll do it again. And I do think that my training got a little bit more, I got a little bit smarter about it as I went on, learned what gels were, learned to hydrate. But honestly, it wasn't until this past one, literally 20 years after my first, that I like really put in the effort to be more strategic about like how I fueled and my nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And at least I got there eventually, but it's a long time.
Yeah. Well, I still haven't really done that. I mean, I do fuel, but I've never worked with somebody to be like, what's the ideal fueling for my body? Like I've kind of tested and learned a little bit, but not enough to like really dive in and get an expert's help. I've thought about doing that recently.
Yeah, this is like, I'll just share a little bit if you're interested about some of the stuff that my nutritionist, her name is Lydia, helped me out a lot with. So one thing she had me do was, have you seen these Gatorade patches that you can, it tests your sodium levels?
No.
So basically it's like a sticker that you put on your forearm and you do some amount of physical activity and then you log like whatever the temperature was and it measures like how much you sweat. And then you know how much sodium you need to be replacing. So she had me wear that and then basically was like, okay, you need to get this much sodium. And it even would start with like the day before. Like, here's what you need. You need to be getting like a lot more sodium than it's not just water. Like you are going to lose, especially in these long summer runs where it's just like you're losing a lot of salt. So here's what you should aim for the day before. Here's what you should aim for replacing during your run. I also got a handheld water bottle, which I never had previously done because I was like, oh, there's water fountains on the lake. I'll just stop and drink when I feel thirsty. It's not a good strategy. And the fact of like having the water bottle, like I just found that because it was more convenient, I was drinking more, I was getting more in. And then another thing too, and I don't know if this is just like bodies getting older or bodies changing or whatever, but I had a really hard time like getting down some of these gels. Like they're disgusting. And so just all throughout my training, like trying out different products, trying out what would work. So for my race day strategy, I alternated like different brands. Like I would do like a goo, and then there's this UCAN gel that was like easier for me to get down. So I would like switch off.
Yeah.
And then another thing she had me do was after a long run, like immediately start like basically replenishing my stores. Like I would bring a protein shake in my car to these long runs because I'd drive there and then we'd all kind of like hang out after. And it's like the equivalent of like drinking chocolate milk or something. Get your protein, start rehydrating. And so it wasn't like I made this broad sweeping change to my diet or anything, but it was just learning more about, hey, you're like really putting your body through a lot. How do you make sure it's getting what it needs? And as we all know, training is just like practicing for race day. So I tried a lot of stuff out. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But I kind of was able to fine tune it so that, that race day, I felt really confident. I was definitely anxious and nervous. It doesn't matter how many marathons you do, you're still going to have those jitters. But I just felt a lot more confident in my nutrition because I had put a lot more effort into it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm weird in that I don't mind goos. They actually are fine on my body. I have a couple flavors I really like. It's still kind of gross. Like the texture is not great. Like especially just trying to get them down kind of as fast as you can. But I found maple syrup. So I've been doing that
So like shots of maple syrup?
It's like literally, I don't know if I have any behind me, but like it's in like a goo type of packaging.
Oh, like a pouch?
But it's literally just, that's all it is pure maple syrup. And it's it's like liquidy. So it's a little easier to just get down. It's like more liquid. So I've really liked those. So I would switch off though as well. I find that I just also just like switching off. It just gives my body something different to look forward to the next time. It sounds as weird as that sounds, but yeah, I recently talked to a podcast guest too about, he was saying he has a really high sweat rate, and it got me thinking like, I think I sweat a lot. So I'm really curious about the Gatorade patch concept. Does it like fill up with sweat or like?
Yeah.
So interesting. I'm going to Google it.
You can just get them offline yourself.
Yeah.
They sell them in like 3-packs, I think. And there's an app. So it has like a, not tracker, but it has, I guess it does fill up with sweat. It's like a line that's like empty. And then you can see it as you're running, like it starts to turn orange, and it's basically like how high does the orange go? And then you can like calculate.
Yeah.
I didn't do it myself because math is not my strong suit. So my nutritionist like figured this out for me. I like sent her my stats. And she's like, okay, here's what you need to do. And also like, I think it was something like, I don't remember, but it was like, you need to be like consuming like 1,000 milligrams of sodium. And I was like, what? That's so much. But then it was also like, that's what you should aspire to. And if you don't get there, like, it's okay. And just trying out, again, like different products. There is this, I think it's actually very popular in podcasts. I've heard it's spelled LMNT,
yes.
Element. And I would do little packets of those, but I would like dilute them a ton in a
they're like so
a 32-ounce
salty.
Nalgene. Yeah, they're super salty. So I'm like, okay, if I can drink this like over the course of a day, I can like get that sodium in. It's just like stuff that I never really thought about before. I was just like, eat some pasta the night before.
Right. I know, right?
Drink some water.
Yes. Yeah. LMNT, they have this like hot chocolate concept now. I haven't tried it yet because I have not run outside recently because I'm a baby and I just run on my treadmill. But you can make it like a hot chocolate.
Okay.
It's salty. So I'm curious to see how it tastes. Because I do like it, but I would dilute it a little bit too, to your point, because it's like you feel like you're just drinking pure salt if you don't.
You're like drinking ocean water.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like ocean water is a good way to put it. So, okay. So Chicago was your first and it's been your most recent, and you've done other races obviously too. A couple of which we've been at together. Let's talk a little bit more about some of those.
Yeah. So I have to like go back in my memory bank. So did St. Louis simply because it was close to where I was going to school.
Where'd you go to school?
University of Missouri.
Okay.
It's a couple hours away. The college town's a couple hours away from St. Louis. It's funny being like a runner for this long because I feel like marathons are having this big moment right now, especially over the last like 3 years. And there's like so many more products, both like to consume and to wear. And there's just, there's influencers, there's so much. When I first started doing marathons, like I was like wearing like cotton t-shirts and like just like whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like now I'm very dedicated to my like chafing gel. I don't even know if that stuff existed at the time or if I knew it existed at the time. So it's funny having been in the running game for this long. Some of those early marathons, I was just like, what was I doing? Like I was just like going out there and basically all cotton stuff and just like running. I don't think I was like paying attention to how many miles were on my shoes at the time. Like I was just like out there.
Yeah.
But fortunately I was young and bodies recover more quickly when you can rebound more quickly. So St. Louis, and then, I don't have like the exact dates. Chicago sprinkled in there a couple more times. And then, you and I did, it was basically in Salt Lake City. That race was so beautiful.
Yes.
It's Big Cottonwood Canyon was the name of it, right?
Yeah, it's a run Revel race. Yeah. Big Cottonwood. Yeah.
Yeah. And Revel has these like beautiful races and really awesome places. So they bus you up to these like, not a mountain, but like some high elevation and it's all downhill, which sounds cool, but it's hard.
Yeah. You did the full and I did the half, and the half, the half didn't bother me like I thought it might, like that, all that downhill. But how was that for you?
I I feel like it was just kind of a blur. Like at the time, I was probably really miserable. And the one thing I remember from that race, well, I remember my iPhone died because I had like an old phone, and so I like lost my music. I think I was like running with my iPhone at the time. And this was one of these group races that we all went and outdid. Some of us did halves, some of us did fulls, but we didn't always necessarily run together. It was just kind of like everyone goes out and does their race. But towards the end, I want to say like the last 5 or 6 miles, I found myself with Kim, that friend that brought us all together. We were both just like running the same pace. And it's like, okay, let's finish this race together. The end of a marathon always sucks. I don't know. It doesn't matter if you're you can be having like a great day, but it's still going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim and I have very different like responses to when we're having a hard time. I like go inside myself and like don't talk and just like try to conserve my energy. Kim gets like really chatty. And so I think that last 5 or 6 miles, we were just like annoying each other so much. I'll have to talk to her and see if her memory is the same as mine.
That's great.
And I was just like, I could just feel myself like seething. And then we crossed the finish line and we were like, hey, sorry, we were kind of mean to each other. So that was like my main memory from that race.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then Philly, which we talked a little bit about before, a group of us did that again. One of those races where I was just having a good day and I was like, okay, I think if I like keep at it, I can run a sub 4. And so that's the only time I've done that. And it felt really good to do that. And I think those are the only non-Chicago ones I've done. So
what about, I have Twin Cities. Is that on there?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
I did some stalking.
I forgot I did that one. Yeah. Again, it's like that was one of my earlier ones where I don't really remember anything. There's like nothing really memorable about it to me. It's just like,
that was another one that
I did it with a friend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think like for a long time, and this has changed now in the past few years, I would just like stare at the ground and like not pay attention to anything. And I've been trying to, I don't know, literally look up more and like see the world around me. So I think if I were to do some of these races again, like Big Cottonwood Canyon or Twin Cities, which are like beautiful, I maybe would have like more vivid memories of them. But at the time I was just like, oh, I'm running this race.
Yeah.
Like,
I get that way too. People be like, oh, I was here and I saw this. And I'm just like, literally, I think about Chicago. Like, I have no idea where I am ever. Like, I mean, I just, you're just on cruise control, just trying to focus like one foot in front of the other. Yeah, I get that way too, where it's just like, I don't know.
I still do.
Yeah.
Like people because I mean, I'm from Chicago, so I know a lot of people here, and people will be like, oh, I'm going to be at intersection. And I'm like, I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
Like, if you tell me what mile you're going to be at, like I can look for you. But I mean, I know the route very well because I've done it so many times, but geography has never been my strong suit. So like, I'm going to be at Clark, at the water station at Clark and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool. Maybe I'll see you.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where that is. Did the Chicago that we did together was 2014? Were you there when we stayed in Kim's like uncle's place?
Yes. Yeah.
That was so fun.
Yeah. That was like, Kim's family member had this condo that was like very close to the starting line, which for all of us who've done marathons, that's like part of the challenge too, is like, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get back? Like it's, I say this repeatedly, maybe I'll change my mind, but right now I'm not changing my mind. I have no aspiration to run New York City because it seems like such a pain in the butt to get to the starting line. It starts so late. I'm like, hey, I'm about to run 26 plus miles. Like, I need this streamlined. And it just seems like New York City requires so much to even just like get there.
It does. When I went and did it, it was like, it took me longer to cross the start line than it took me to cross the finish line. Like, and I'm not like an amazing, fast marathoner. So it took, I think, over 5 hours to get there, like from our hotel to a subway, to the bus, to the start where you just like hang out for a long time. Yeah, it is. It was an awesome race and very memorable for me, but I don't know that I would do it again, which I've said, because I'm like, it was a lot and it's a lot now to get into and do. And so I did it because that's when, Kim and Selena and Ashley were all doing it. So I'm like, well, this is my chance, I want to go do it with somebody else, so I might as well. And so, but now I'm like, it was amazing and incredible, but that's good. So if you're already feeling like you don't have to, then there's so many races.
Yeah.
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 So many.
I do. If I have one running regret, when would that have been 2019?
It was 2018.
2018. Okay. I regret not going to that race with you all. I don't regret not running it, but I don't remember what my reasoning was.
I don't either.
But that would have been like the last hurrah of this group.
Yeah.
And not that we can't do it again, but I think also as you get older and you have way more life commitments, especially with family.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really cherish those times that we did these destination races together. And yeah, would love to do it again because we just like don't do stuff like that. You're just you get stuck in your groove of your day to day. And when I think about like races that I would want to do in the future, definitely not New York, as I've already mentioned, but somewhere like just really visually beautiful.
Yes.
I know people like chase the majors, but they're these days now that marathons are like so popular, they're so hard to get into. They're so expensive, even if you do get in. And I don't know, what about like, I heard there's like an amazing like Portugal marathon, or I had a friend who did Big Sur last year. Ooh. That's also really hard to get into because it's such a small, I think they only let like a few thousand people in. But I love city marathons. I love Chicago, but I don't know, maybe a more scenic one that also costs less money.
Right. Yeah, I'm all about that. I've started talking about that on this podcast too. I'm like, I just want to pick a place I want to go and then figure out when their marathon is, and have that as an excuse to go there. And it's a cool way to see a place. And it's funny thinking about that. I did a Ragnar last year. And so it's like, oh, girls' weekend, we could either go do something where we're like on a beach drinking margaritas, or we could just sleep in a van.
But I remember you tried to get us to do it.
I did.
I was just like, I can't. I love
You're
my bed too much. Yeah.
Yeah. There was no place for you to sleep next to me. So, well, unless it was a tent on the ground, which was not
ideal.
On
the floor next to the bench seat in the van.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I love the mindset of finding somewhere beautiful or like inspiring just to go. The majors are just, so tough now. I want to talk a little bit more about you and your personal life because I find you so cool, just so you know.
Thanks.
You're like the coolest. I'm like, I'm not cool enough to be friends with Betsy or like Laura Kim or Selena for that matter. But you're a writer, which is really cool. How did that come about? And did you go to the University of Missouri for writing?
Yes. Yeah. So one thing that I feel very just like grateful for is I've always known since I was a little girl that I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. I was really into this dorky computer game that nobody knows about called Imagination Express, where you would just basically like write stories and do like sticker art. I loved it and would write like really bad short stories in my notebook. I still have them. I will not read them to you. And so I knew I wanted to do something with like words writing. I went to University of Missouri for journalism, and I did not stay in journalism for long because it was not a very good job market. I work in tech today. I'm a user experience writer. I've been a copywriter, like different iterations of writing. But the past 4 years, I've been writing a book, which is another feat of endurance, I would say. And this is a new type of writing for me, or it was when I started, of writing about myself. So the book is a memoir. It's about growing up in this dilapidated Victorian house that my parents bought with the intention of kind of DIY restoring it themselves, and kind of touches on the American dream and resilience and restoration. And so that has been my, in addition to running, my like side piece for the past few years. And what's really interesting about this, and I kind of talk to my therapist about this a lot, is how much running and writing for me are so interconnected, because both of these things, like to aspire to run a marathon, to aspire to write a book, are like kind of insane. Like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to put your body through that? Why do you want to write a book that no one asked you to write? This is the thing. No one asks you to run a marathon. No one asks you to write a book. It's just something that you intrinsically need to do on your own. And you are not going to be motivated to do it all the time. Like, you're not going to wake up every single day and be like, I am so excited to run. Some days, hopefully, yes. But if you're training for a marathon, absolutely not. There are going to be days that are like a total slog. And it's kind of the similar thing with writing is every day doesn't feel great. Like, even though I am a writer at the core, sometimes you're just like, ugh, this sucks. I'm bad at it. But you just kind of like, both with running and writing, the only way out is through. Like, you just have to kind of keep putting one foot in front of the other. And where you make progress is through that consistency and just like keep showing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even if you're not having a great day. And, you know, there's that like silly quote from A League of Their Own where Tom Hanks is like yelling at, I think the character's name is Dottie, and she's quitting baseball. And she's like, it's just not for me anymore. It's too hard. And he goes like, it's the hard that makes it great. Like, if it was hard, everyone wouldn't do it. And I've really tried to scale back and not be this like super accomplishment focused person. I was like that for a long time. I still am. I mean, I'm running marathons. Like, clearly there's something in me that like wants to accomplish things. And similar with the book, like, I really want to finish this book. I'm revising it right now. I hope to make some inroads in the publishing industry and actually get it on the path to publication this year. But with both things, running and writing, yes, there's a destination, there's a goal, be it like finish that book, finish that race. But it's, as cheesy as it sounds, it's like the journey along the way too. Like, what you learn about yourself, the friendships that you make, the like great impact it has on your mental and physical health. Like, there are all these things that you get out of doing the thing that are just really intrinsically rewarding.
Hey, quick reminder, this podcast is brought to you by Athlete Bouquets. Visit athletebouquets.com to celebrate the finish lines and milestones of the people you love, and use code PODCAST for 10% off your order. When did you start writing the memoir?
January 1st, 2020. It was like, I like opened my computer that day and I was like, I'm going to start. And it was just garbage, whatever I put on my computer. So it's been a long journey of how to figure out how to like put together a book, how to do like a story arc about my own life, essentially.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of teach myself how to do it. You just like learn by doing, kind of.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of different ways to write a book, different processes. I can't say that I have like a particularly clean one. Just like kept working at it, I guess.
Yeah. Because it's like, how do you know when you start writing it? Obviously, you don't know, okay, this book's going to be 500 pages and there's going to be this many chapters, and like, and how did you like interview family members? Are you like going through pictures and like
so much? Yeah. It's kind of shaped and shifted how I've approached it, but very early on, I was researching the house itself a lot.
Which is so cool. How do you do that?
Well, it's this historic house. It's actually built by a famous architect, the guy who designed Chicago's first skyscraper. So there's actually a ton of like, the town where I grew up has its own little museum. I would like go to the museum, research the house. The library had like a lot of information about this architect. And then, yes, photos. Like, I didn't even know my mom had all these photos of the house, that once she learned that I was working on this book, it was like hundreds of photos.
Wow.
I have them like all cataloged now. And another just gold mine, which there's this whole other story about, I didn't even know this previously existed. It kind of like came to me in a funny way. But my father wrote this like restoration journal where he's like keeping record of all the work that they were doing. And I didn't find out about it until basically the current owner of the house like gave it to me. I didn't even know that he had worked on this. So like reading his journal, kind of just like cross-referencing my memories. My dad's no longer around, but my mom and my sister are. And so I sometimes, like try to ask them things, but like sometimes they don't remember, which is like really funny. It's like, wait, you don't remember? But sometimes they do. And there are stories in the book, like for example, when a raccoon fell through our ceiling, I was too young to remember it. It's just like this family lore story. I was only like 3 at the time, but my mom remembers like the whole thing. So yeah, that helps me like build out that scene in my book of my mom's like, here's what happened with the raccoon. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
which
it's
room?
kind of
Which room?
It was our playroom. The way that my sister was like playing with her Barbies and She told my dad she heard scratching in the ceiling, and then my dad went in there and this raccoon just like fell through. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. It's been really messy, honestly. It's just kind of like putting this stuff together, writing scenes, writing chapters. And again, I'm going to tie this back to running. I've done like several writing classes, like different writing groups where you like exchange work. Like, I'll give you 10 pages of my stuff. You give me 10 pages of yours. We'll swap. We'll like give each other feedback. And that's something that has been super helpful because everyone's doing their own projects, but it's really lonely and hard to do this on your own. And sometimes you need that accountability.
Yeah.
So same with like marathon training is you're going to have to do the work yourself. No one's going to do it for you, but it's really, really helpful to have someone, even if they're just like silently miserable next to you while you're running the last 3 miles of that 20 miler, they're there.
Yeah.
And you're both like struggling through it together.
Yeah.
And that really matters.
Yeah, that I would imagine finding other people doing something similar in the writing space would be helpful to have around. And same as running.
And it opens like, because so the people that I usually exchange work with or I'm doing writing groups with, they're also working on memoir material. They're not writing fiction. So they're writing about their own lives. And over the past 4 years that I've been working on this and finding other writers, oh my gosh, the people that I've met, like the stories that I've read, the life experiences that I'm learning about just through like sharing work with other people, it's just like so amazing. And it really opens, I don't know what it would be like to work on like fiction because I'm not doing it, but it's just honestly, it's just like such a gift to be able to read someone else's work. And I also always joke, but it's kind of true. I'm always like the youngest person by like 20 years because a lot of people who are working on kind of like life story memoir type of stuff are a little bit older, retired, and I'm always like the young
That's
person.
So funny. Yeah, I could see that.
So I don't know. People have great stories to tell, and it's really admirable when they're like trying to put them together into like something that other people can consume or read.
Yeah. Well, I find that somewhat similar, like in this podcast, just getting to know people and talking about life and what people have been through. It's just really cool because everybody does have a very unique story and experience. And some of them are like crazier or, more sad than others, or they're just all so incredibly different. But at the same time, some very similar, especially when it comes to runners, because we all have this like weird, crazy piece of us that wants to run marathons or just run in general. So
yeah, there's some little wire in our brains that draws us to this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain to anyone outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why would you want to spend 4 months of your life like consistently waking up at 4:35 a.m. to go run? And you're like, if you don't want to do it, like, I'm not going to try to talk you into it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I get this all the time from people. I try to be very conscious because there's like some people who like marathon runners are like all they talk about, and you're like, okay, we get it. We get that's your thing.
Yep.
I try not to be like that.
Me too.
I don't like bring it up in every single conversation or anything. But occasionally people will find out that I'm like a runner, and immediately people are always like, I hate running. And I'm like, that's fine.
Cool.
I'm not trying to make you into one. Like, I really don't. If it's not for you, it's not for you. And some people really, really hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, yeah, I'll just be with my people over here, like doing our weird stuff together.
Yep. Yeah. I feel exactly the same. It's like, that's cool. If you don't ever want to run, that's fine. It's my entire life, but if you hate it, like, yeah, no, I don't say that. But I do try to be more self-aware of how obnoxious I can be if I get onto running. Like I have to be like, oh, they just asked this. So probably time to wrap this up. Like I could talk obviously forever about the topic. So that's why I have this podcast. So I can just talk as much as I want about running.
Yeah.
And everybody who listens to it wants to hear about running, clearly. So Okay, another topic that's not running related is travel, which I guess is kind of running related. We tied it to that. We talked about, Portugal. Maybe they have a marathon there that would be great. But you traveled while Otto was pretty young, and I thought that was pretty cool. My girls, I'm actually literally have a tab open to start the passport process for my girls because I'm like, I want to have it as an option to do. So, yeah, did you travel a ton previously? I believe you did, and then just want to share that love with him. So tell us about that.
Before I get started, I just want to share like a quick travel tip with you with the girls. Have you heard of global entry before? It's kind of like TSA pre-check, but internationally. They're changing the rules where I think they might have already changed them, where you as a parent can get global entry and just like include your children into yours.
Oh.
Previously you had to do like a separate application, separate fee for everybody. And now, just look into it because especially if you're going internationally anywhere, you can just like get through customs a lot faster.
Yeah. Do they have in Chicago where you can do global entry? Like the interview?
You have to do an interview. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know they don't have it here. My parents are going to New Zealand this week, actually. So we were just talking about global entry yesterday.
Okay.
And my dad was trying to get it before they went, but, couldn't get an interview scheduled or whatever. So I think Chicago would probably be where I would go. Yeah.
Yeah, but it takes like a long time to get on the interview. So even if you're thinking about it, get the passports and just like schedule the interview because it might take like forever.
Yeah, that's good to know.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my husband and I traveled a lot before we had Otto. We probably did like one international trip a year. For a period of time, I got like really into kind of like this miles hacking thing where you would like open up credit cards and get like sign-on bonuses. And so we were able to go to like a lot of cool places where our like tickets were basically covered. And I don't know if it was just like naivete or what, but when we had Otto, we just were like, oh, well, he'll be pretty portable. So we'll just like do some trips. And he probably went on we went to visit my sister in New York. My husband Jake is really into baseball. We went to spring training in Florida. And funny that you mentioned Portugal. Maybe this is why Portugal's on my mind. But we went to Portugal.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
All before he was like 4 months or I think he was like 4 months old. So some of I don't know. I feel like it made me feel like super mom because you're like, man, I'm like managing like an infant. And sometimes it's really hard. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is the worst moment of my life. Like everything is going wrong. But then like 5 minutes later, it's fine. I don't know. I feel like this can be the way with kids sometimes where you're just like, sleep is all messed up, all this, all that, trying to figure out eating. But then you try something and it like actually works and you're like, holy shit, like I'm doing this. I'm so cool that I am like managing to be standing on my own 2 feet right now.
Yeah.
Every phase of having a kid, and you know this better than I do because you've been a parent longer than I have, has its own challenges. So although parts of it were hard when he was really little, I think the period that I'm at now where my kid is a little bit older too, traveling would be so hard.
Right, because they won't stop moving and they're so wiggly and like don't want to be confined to like a seat. And that can be a whole.
Yeah. So we are talking about that as a family, like, okay, how do we kind of adjust? I think it's a short period of time. Once he's a little bit older, I think traveling will be a lot easier. But we took our last flight with him. We did just this like short family trip to DC for like a family event in the fall, like right before he turned 2. And we're like, we're going to risk it and not pay for him for a seat because you can fly with your child for free up until 2. But they have to be what's defined as a lap infant. Like you have to hold them.
Yeah.
We were like in tatters by the end of it. We're like, what have we done? Like, why did we do this?
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if I like have to keep tying everything back to running, but it's my nature to do it for this podcast. Like a tough flight, a tough situation with a kid while traveling. You just have to remind yourself, like, it's going to end at some point. Like if you're having a bad race, you're like, it will not be forever. This flight is 2 hours and it might be like the worst 2 hours of my life, but at some point it will end.
Yes.
And we'll be okay.
Such a good analogy. My friend Carly, who was on this podcast, I don't know when, months ago, but the title of her podcast ended up being, "This is Easier Than Parenting." Because sometimes you would find that like literally it's easier to go out and run a marathon than it is to like get your kid to like eat something that you would like them to eat. It's like, like for the marathon, you're just responsible for yourself. So that becomes it's funny to think about it that way and that it can be a lot easier. Or you like think, okay, if I can do that, like what I did with the kid or like giving birth, like I can easily do this. Like this is way easier than that.
Yeah.
Although
Makes
at
a
the
lot of
time,
sense to me.
sometimes it doesn't feel that way for sure. But yeah.
I think also traveling with children, it can be so rewarding. And I think kids are actually more resilient than we give them credit for.
Yes.
It's like, oh, are they going to be able to do this? Their sleep's going to,
Mhm.
time difference is going to be messed up. And we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit for too. So I think there's this like fear that it's like, oh, it's going to be too hard, that puts people off of it. And it's like with all things, like, yeah, it might be hard, but there's going to be like some really awesome moments that you will cherish too. And you're not going to get a chance at those awesome moments if you don't like kind of go for it and give it a try.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I feel like there were times, even now too, where I talk myself out of things because I just, for some reason, it's like, oh, that seems like it's going to be too hard to do. Like, especially and specifically with kids, because you already make the decision that, oh, doing that's going to be too hard or too much for them. But then you'll be in a situation where you thought it would be, and it's not at all what you expected. Like, yeah.
Or it's like a learning thing too. Like that's what I always try to tell myself is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that again. I learned.
Yeah.
Like, not really travel related, but I was like really committed to taking my son on the like CTA holiday train, which is like the subway in Chicago. They decorate it for Christmas and stuff, but it's not every single train. It's just like you have to check the schedule and like the train comes through at a certain point. And I was like committed to doing this because my kid loves trains. I like brought too much stuff. It was too crowded. Like it wasn't great. I think he was too young for it. But you know what? Now I know that.
Right.
And I learned.
Yeah.
And if I do it again next year, I've got some tips that I learned this time. Or I might not do it again next year, which is also an option.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. Okay. Before I forget, I want to ask how you got the name Otto because I love it so much.
Yeah. It was just even before I was pregnant, like a few years ago, my husband just mentioned like he liked the name Otto. It's not a family name, although it is an old German name. We don't have any German heritage. And he's just like, yeah, I kind of like that name. And I was like, okay, I like it too. It's also a palindrome, same forwards and backwards. So for a writer,
yeah,
there's that. And when we found out that we were having a boy, we only had one name on our list. And so done and done.
That's so nice. How easy is that? You're just like, yeah, we both like that name. We figured that out a long time ago. And yeah. I love it. It's so cute.
Yeah, I like it too. And it's funny because I think these 2-syllable short names are very in fashion right now for boys, just judging by other names at daycare and like other kids that I see around or parents that I meet. But the funny thing is like it's also easy to say. And so in his daycare, like everyone like knows his name, but like no one says any of the other kids' names.
Yeah.
So, like it's just, and I'm really setting him up for success because he only has to learn 2 letters to spell his name.
That is so true. Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad for my kids just with like last name part. Like it took my oldest a while to spell Brettnacher, but she can now. But yeah, I think it's interesting to your point. Like there's not really another way to look at Otto and like try to say it a different way, which is really nice. Yeah.
He does have a bad last name because he has a hyphenated last name, a combination of mine and my husband's name. So, at least his first name's easy.
Will you say it for me, your hyphen name?
Yeah, Otto Michael Guidry.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael. I'm glad you said Michael because I want to not say Michael.
It looks like Mickle.
Yeah.
And I've been told since I was a young child that it's pronounced Michael, so I'm going with that.
Well, yeah. Yeah, sorry. No, we need to pronounce it differently now. Yeah. Okay. Gosh, Otto. And how did you meet your husband, Jake? Did you guys meet in school?
Yeah, we met in college.
Okay.
Yeah. We both went to University of Missouri. We met senior year. I mean, there's no like amazing story. We just like met at a college bar through a mutual friend.
Beautiful. And it was the start of something beautiful. There you go.
Sticky floors of a college bar, the 50-cent beers. It was just really romantic.
It's where dreams are made. And so for this year, I mean, we talked about hot autos too, so it's like not ideal, but do you have any big trips planned or anything for this year?
We are mostly, both my husband and I both have individual trips planned, which is like, I think a great thing that we do for each other is like letting each other like spend time by themselves or with their friends. So it's still early in the year. He's got something planned to Europe with some buddies. We're kind of talking about it for this next winter. We've never done like a sit around in a resort type of trip. Have you done one of those before?
Oh, yes. Well,
okay.
My husband doesn't like to sit around. I like to sit around and like read a book and drink a margarita on a beach. But he is like, let's play volleyball or do stuff. Anyway, continue.
Okay. Well, I think we've actually talked about this at this phase in our life. Like we used to be like, oh, that sounds so boring to like sit around somewhere. And we always would do these like city trips where we're like running around, going to all these places. And now we're like, actually, that sounds really nice. So I need to do some research and like see what's reasonable. And some of these places have like kids clubs.
Right.
I like sound like I'm like so eager to like get rid of my kid. I'm not.
Believe you're in good company. It's not that I want to get rid of them, but you need time to be you again, like we talked about earlier.
And it's also what will be fun for him. And I don't think that like traipsing around a city is going to be fun for a little kid. So maybe we've been talking about it. We haven't made any commitments, but that might be what we're thinking about for next winter is something more chill. And we can always go back to those like city things. This is like I said, the phase of our lives is once he's older and can walk for longer periods of time.
Yes.
And, we can do that kind of stuff. And I think that's been important for me to just be around friends who have kids a little bit older, be like, oh, this is what like my future could possibly hold. It won't be me holding a toddler kicking and screaming on a plane with all of his toys and snacks on the floor forever.
Yeah.
Like, that's just where we are right now.
Soon he'll be able to have an attention span to like watch a movie on a plane. And that's game changing because you're just like, okay, now I can watch a movie or read a book. It's like such a different experience.
It's so funny. There's like all these conversations about screen time. It's like, oh, don't give your kids too much screen time. I cannot wait. I cannot wait until he can watch a movie.
I know it sounds so bad, but at the same time, like it's a different, it helps a lot when you travel. That's for sure. We brought our kids to Chicago, like I said earlier, like it had been my first time in a long time, but their first time ever. And it was really cool. So like they're at the age now where it's like they could hang and walk and experience all the cool stuff. And I can't wait to take them back because Chicago obviously has a ton to offer. So we barely scratched the surface.
Well, I think it just didn't work out this time, but next time, let's definitely get a lakefront run in.
Yes.
We got to do it.
I will ask again. I will ask every time I'm there. I'm like, okay, guys, come see me.
You're very good at it. Yeah. I don't remember what was going on when you were in town. I just wasn't able to like make it work.
I feel like you weren't feeling well. So next time. All right. And now before I ask you the end of the podcast questions, I want to talk about ASICs because I'm the same way. Sort of the same. I also run in Saucony now and some ones that are actually good for running. But ASICS Gel Nimbus, I've had like a million.
This is just like my PSA to the world. I mean, everyone has different feet, different bodies. Like obviously, like find the pair of shoes that work for you.
Yeah.
But I have been running in ASICS ever since I was 14. And I wish I even had some of those pairs because they're like back in style now. These like hideous.
Yes. That's so funny.
For a long time, and my husband would make fun of me. He's way more fashionable than I am. He like, those shoes are ugly. Like, why are you? I'm like, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, I love these shoes. I did take some detours to try out a couple other brands at some point. And I did have a pair of Ons. I tried a pair of Hoka's, but I was just like, you know what? I got to go back to the tried and true ASICS. And so this is kind of just my way into advertising my belief that like you don't need like a bunch of fancy gear to run. It's really easy to get swept into that, and I have succumbed to it too. I bought these like really expensive socks. I don't know why. I bought like 4 pairs of these like compression socks. I'm like, these will help me. But ASICS has come around and they do have some cool colorways and they like are becoming more fashionable. But I was just like, I've always run in ASICS. And when everyone's like, what shoes do you in? I'm like, ASICS. I just am like evangelizing these shoes because you don't have to follow like the trends. You can just go with whatever works.
Whatever works. And which model do you run in?
It's like the GT I don't know like the exact name of it. I just like keep buying the same pair over and over.
Yeah. That's what I did for like a million years. And then I worked in a running store, and that's why I ended up with multiple brands, just because I was exposed to them. I got them at a good discount. And then like now I just feel like I'm like, oh, I have a pair of racing shoes because I'm now super runner. I use air quotes. It's funny because I did totally succumb to that, but I do love having a pair dedicated to a race because it's really fun, but it's not because it's helping me qualify or win anything. But yeah, the Gel Nimbus A6 shoe. Yeah, I probably had 30 pairs.
I almost got like a pair of racing shoes because I like I said, I got swept up into it. I went to the running store. I was like, should I buy Vaporflies? Like everyone's doing Vaporflies. Am I going to do that? And I like tried them on and I was like, what are these? I couldn't do it. And the shoe specialist who's actually in my running group, and she's a friend of mine, she's like, okay, those aren't for you. But if you're looking for a lighter pair, because I'm running in these like heavy, clunky shoes. And I'm like, do I need something more lightweight for my marathon? And she's like, here, try these on. I did really like them in the store. I bought them. I also run in insoles, which I didn't previously.
Yeah, I do now too.
And have gone up half a size, which I also didn't previously do. Because, bodies change. I didn't think my feet grew when I was pregnant. I was like, all my shoes fit the same. But when I got fitted, when I wanted to get back to running about a year postpartum, they're like, yeah, you need to go up half a size. And I was like, oh, okay. So another PSA, get fitted for shoes, even if you think you know what's up, because you might not. So anyways, I bought these like lightweight pair of Ons for my race. And then I like got superstitious and freaked out. I was like, I don't know. And I did some test runs in them, I didn't but I was just like, I've always run an A6. I can't do it. So I ran in my like clunky heavy A6 and it was more, a superstition thing.
That's funny. I like that. That's hilarious. Well, yeah, I mean, now every brand has like a racing shoe too that's like lighter. I've never tried A6. I bet I would love it. Saucony now has some, I think they're just somewhat similar in terms of my feet, whatever shape my feet are, work well with both A6 and Saucony. I can't wear Nikes. I've tried on Vaporflies and others before, and I'm just like, I can't wear them. They don't fit my feet very well. Same with Hoka's. So yeah, that's funny. And the expensive socks, I've done that too. But now I have the expensive socks and they last forever, which is nice. And then I also sometimes get lazy and just don't change out of my Bombas or like whatever cotton socks I grab from my drawer, and that's fine too, usually. So
I do treat my expensive socks very well. I like air dry them. It's like I spend so much money on these socks. Like I really have to.
So funny. Yeah. You're like, no, I will never. Yeah, I will air dry them and iron them. I just picture you like ironing them. That's funny.
You know where they get you is those expos. That's where, because I had like one pair of these. And then I was like, oh, I just want to get another pair. And then I was at the Marathon Expo and they're like, it's buy two, get one free. And I was like,
all right, take all my money.
Do that.
Yeah, take all
like now
my
I have
money.
all these socks I didn't really need.
Yeah. So that's funny. All right, I'm going to ask you the end of the podcast questions now, which is sad, but you need to get back. You're actually, at work in an office.
It is sad. I have to go back to work.
Yeah, you have to go back to work. Okay, so favorite running mantra and song.
Okay. So mantra, and this all ties back to like kind of changing my relationship with running. I used to like really beat myself up and be like, suck it up, push hard or whatever. And now I try to treat myself like a very overenthusiastic coach. And I started doing this during my last training cycle and I kind of felt dorky, but I just would like tell myself I was awesome. I'm like, you're amazing. You're doing great. And typically when a mantra comes into play is when you're struggling, it's like a long run or even not a long run. And it's just like, you're having a rough time. So I just try to tell myself I'm like, you're amazing for being out here. You're amazing for the miles that you already did. You're amazing that you are making this work with a toddler. And so I think that really helped. And another mantra that especially helped during race day was just to focus, and I did this during training too, is just like focus on the mile that you're in.
Yes.
Which I know is a common one, but I'm a big planner. I'm someone who's like always like thinking ahead. And it's like, no, don't think about those next 6 miles. Just think about this one.
Yes.
And when you get to that one, you can think about that one. But right now, just think about this one.
Yeah.
And favorite song, honestly, I don't really have one. It kind of rotates through different stuff, but I do have this like moment of when I was training and I was just doing like a standard, I don't know, kind of mid to long run. It's like 12 or 13 miles. But the LCD sound system Dance Yourself Clean came on in my playlist and it just like rejuvenated me. And I like ran this last mile like so fast. I'm like, I should not be running this fast. I was like running down the street like by my house. And like people probably think I look like an insane person. But so now that I've got that in my back pocket, I've got this really dancey song that gets me going, I guess.
Yeah. What podcast do you listen to when you run?
I do podcasts. I also do a lot of audiobooks.
Yeah, same.
But there's this one that I'm really into called You're Wrong About. And I think actually our common running friend Laura turned me onto it, maybe Kim. Essentially, it's the host, her name is Sarah Marshall, and she has guests on who talk about these like people in pop culture that maybe were misrepresented or misunderstood. And there's a running one that I really, really recommend where she, her guest is it wrote a book about women's running. It's called Faster, Better, Farther, I think. I have to double check the name of it. But the topic of this particular podcast episode was, I think her name is Rosie Ruiz, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And she faked winning Boston. And she was like one of the first like women to win Boston, but it was like all a sham. She cheated. And it's all about her kind of like how that happened. And it really gave you like a sense of perspective of, I don't know, you have a lot of empathy for this person at the end of the podcast because you learn more about her story and like what led her to do that and like how she did it. So
wow, yeah.
Highly recommend that one.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can send the link if you want to like include it in the notes.
Yes. Yeah. I wrote it down too. So that sounds like a good one. I'm always a sucker for a good podcast or like a good audiobook when I'm running. Yeah. Because I have a running playlist too, but yeah, I just found switching it up helps me. Okay.
Yeah, you can't constantly have music like in your ears all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And then I tried not without any headphones, by the way. My last marathon. It was crazy.
How'd it go?
Great. It's weird.
Yeah, I didn't run with music my last marathon either. I had a playlist. I was going to save it for mile 20 or like the last portion, 20 on. And my headphones died. It got like threw me like 3 songs and I was like, well. Oh,
yeah,
well.
It's fine. I know. Well, yeah, I used to always think like, oh my gosh, yeah, if my headphones died, then I'd feel like mentally it's really hard when you like rely on having it. So it's nice not to, but I don't know. I can go both ways for sure. There's no wrong way. It's just whatever way you want to do it. But it's also,
and it depends on like what mood you're in or something too.
Yeah. Well, and to our point earlier about like enjoying the experience and like being more present and like, look, I think it helps do that too, because instead of distracting yourself with song, you're kind of, I don't know, trying to distract yourself with whatever's happening around you. So
totally.
Yeah. Okay. And then next finish line or milestone, we've kind of talked about the big milestone and getting your book on the path to publication this year, which is so cool.
Yep.
And that you're not committing to races. So no races for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a roundabout way of answering the question because it's kind of like an anti-answer, but my running goal this year is just to really like have fun with it, to not have the pressure or the like requirement of following a training program. I mentioned I've got other friends training for stuff and I'm happy to just like join their runs. I still want to, and this is really new for me. I was always running to accomplish something. And now at this stage that I am in my life, like running it's become something that's about making time for myself, making time for my health, making like the community aspect of it, which wasn't previously there before. And just kind of like letting go of expectation of that I'm trying to hit a certain pace or PR again or something. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to lie. Like there's that seed in the back of my head that's like, hey, maybe one day in the future, you know, I can do a race where I really go for a certain time, but that's just not the season that I'm in right now. And I think that's really important with running. I mean, you've been a runner for a long time too. It's like, you can't always have the same reasons to do it. Mm-hmm. You can't always be trying to best yourself because guess what? You're not gonna.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And the fact that I was able to do this marathon last year and kind of like change my relationship to running, that was my huge accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And I really had to put aside trying to hit a certain time to do that. And so now I wonder, I don't know, can I try to hit a time while still having fun with it? That is yet to be foreseen.
Mm-hmm. To be continued.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for doing this, Betsy, especially in the middle of a Monday.
Yeah, this was so fun.
So
Thank
much
you
fun.
for asking me on. I feel like a celebrity. So
you are.
Thank you
now.
so much.
Of course. And thank you to everybody who's listened, and happy running.
Have a great rest of your day.
If you enjoyed this Sandy Boy Productions podcast, be sure to share, rate, review, and remember, Indy, save the date, May 2nd. See you then.